A poor mechanic found a girl bleeding in his garage. What happened next changed his life forever. "You call this fixed? The damn thing still makes that whining noise." The man's voice was sharp, slicing through the silence of the garage like a blade. Snow clung to his shoulders, melting and dripping onto the oil-stained floor. Carlos stood beside the open hood of a dusty 2009 Dodge Caravan, hands black with grease, his breath misting in the freezing air. He exhaled slowly before speaking, his voice calm but firm. "That whining is your power steering pump. I told you last week it needed replacement. You said to wait." The man huffed, shaking his head with exaggerated frustration. "You mechanics are all the same, just looking for ways to squeeze out a few extra bucks. I paid you to fix the noise." Carlos wiped his hands on a rag, then walked over to the counter and opened a drawer. He pulled out the invoice and slid it across. "You paid for a timing belt change. I did that. Your engine's not knocking anymore. The pump's another issue." The man glanced at the paper, then rolled his eyes. "Fine. Just make sure it runs. I got kids to pick up." Carlos nodded once, quietly, while the man grumbled his way out the door. The old bell above the frame jingled half-heartedly before silence reclaimed the garage. Outside, snow was falling in heavy sheets, the streetlights casting long shadows through the white. The storm had come in fast, one of those Michigan blizzards that swallowed the city whole in a matter of hours. Carlos reached over to shut off the shop lights. Only the warm hum of a portable heater remained. He moved to lock the front door but stopped. Someone, was lying just beyond the edge of the garage awning, half buried in the snow. He stepped closer, heart thudding. A girl, young. Her coat was torn and soaked through. Blood stained the snow around her shoulder and one side of her face. Her legs were curled under her, as if she had collapsed mid-run. Carlos dropped to his knees beside her. "Miss?" His voice cracked with urgency. No response. He touched her arm, ice cold. Her pulse was faint but steady. Instinct kicked in. He slid one arm beneath her back, the other under her knees, and lifted her into his chest. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in a way that unsettled him. Her head lolled to the side as he carried her into the warmth of the garage. He laid her on the old leather couch near the heater, quickly moving to grab his first aid kit from the tool shelf. The cut on her temple was long, but not deep. More troubling was the gash in her left side, jagged, maybe from glass or metal. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale as frost. Carlos cleaned the wounds, wrapping them carefully. He covered her in 2 blankets, then tried the landline. Dead. The storm must have taken down the lines. He reached for his old cell phone. No signal. "Damn it," he muttered, then looked back at her. Her lips moved faintly. He leaned in. No hospital," she whispered. "Please." He blinked. Her eyes were barely open, but there was fear in them, real, raw fear. "All right," he said, lowering his voice. "No hospital. Just breathe. You're safe now." She passed out again. Carlos ran a damp cloth over her forehead, then placed a warm water bottle by her hands. He used a space heater to gently warm the air around her, but kept it at a safe distance. Minutes stretched into hours. Carlos stayed by her side, checking her pulse, adjusting the bandages, adding another blanket. He brewed black tea and tried spooning a few drops into her mouth when she stirred. He didn't wake. He didn't ask himself why he was doing this. He had no reason to. The moment he saw her lying in the snow, broken and bleeding, his decision was made. Not because it was heroic, not because he was bored or lonely, but because something in him, something old and stubborn and quietly aching, knew it was the only right thing left in a world that too often forgot how to care. Outside, the wind screamed against the garage doors, but inside there was warmth. A girl slept, wounded and afraid. A man kept watch, hands still stained with oil but now working toward something far more delicate than machines. As midnight approached, Carlos settled into the armchair across from the couch, arms crossed, jaw tight. He stared at the soft rise and fall of her chest. Whoever she was, wherever she had come from, it no longer mattered. She had found his garage, and now she was his responsibility. Anna woke slowly, like a diver surfacing from deep water. The soft buzz of an old heater, the scent of engine grease mixed with something warm, chicken broth maybe, filled her senses before her eyes even opened. When they did, she found herself staring at a cracked ceiling and the faint glow of morning behind frosted windows. She sat up abruptly, pain shooting through her side, and gasped. Her arms flailed, reaching for something, anything, until a calm voice met her panic. "Easy," Carlos said from across the room. He stood near a workbench, holding a steaming mug. "You are safe here." She blinked at him, unsure. Where am I?" "My garage," he answered. "You were hurt. Found you outside 2 nights ago. Snowstorm. You remember anything?" Anna looked down at the bandage on her arm, then at the blanket wrapped around her legs. She shook her head slowly. "Not everything," she lied. Carlos did not press. He nodded once, placed the mug on a nearby crate, and returned to his work in silence. Over the next few days, Anna moved like a shadow, quiet, reserved, watching everything. She never gave a full name. When asked where she was from, she mumbled something about upstate. But Carlos, true to the nature he had shown since the first moment, never asked more than she was ready to give. He fed her simple meals, stew, grilled cheese, oatmeal, and left them on the table without comment. He never hovered. When her bandages needed changing, he worked with the care of a man tuning a delicate engine, his hands gentle and precise. In return, Anna began to help around the garage. She swept the floors, organized tools, folded rags. One afternoon, she surprised Carlos by correctly identifying a worn-out alternator. "My dad taught me a little," she said, eyes downcast. Carlos smiled softly but said nothing. As the days passed, Anna began to heal, physically and otherwise. The darkness in her eyes slowly gave way to something softer. At night, she sat by the heater with a book Carlos had left on the table. During the day, she sometimes watched him work, curiosity flickering in her gaze. Once, while trying to lift a box of brake pads, she winced and stumbled. Carlos caught her elbow without a word, steadying her. She looked up at him, startled, and for a moment their eyes locked. Something passed between them, unspoken, fragile, real. "I am sorry," she murmured. I am not trying to be a burden." "You are not," he replied quietly. "People need help sometimes. That's just life." She swallowed hard. Later that night, by the weak light of the garage's only lamp, Anna finally said, "I ran away." Her voice was brittle. "From someone powerful? Someone family?" Carlos simply nodded. "I figured it was something like that." "You are not going to ask who?" she whispered. "No." She stared at him for a long time, then finally looked away. "Thank you." The snowstorm eased by the end of the week. The city beyond the garage slowly stirred again. Buses resumed their routes, neighbors shoveled sidewalks. But inside the small workshop, time moved gently. On the 7th morning, Anna woke to find a neatly wrapped bundle at the foot of the couch. Confused, she opened it to discover a pair of snow boots, sturdy, lined with wool. Clearly new. She stared at them, then at Carlos, who stood a few feet away pretending to adjust the heater. "They looked like your size," he said simply. Anna sank to the couch, boots in her lap. Her hands trembled. "Why?" she asked, voice cracking. Carlos did not turn. "Because it is cold out there, and I figured you would need them." Tears spilled over her cheeks before she could stop them. She pressed the boots to her chest and sobbed, not from fear or pain this time, but from the overwhelming, unfamiliar sensation of being cared for, without condition. No demands, no expectations, just kindness, unadorned and real. In that moment, something inside her, wounded and curled tight for so long, finally began to unfold. The garage was quiet that morning, except for the faint ticking of a cooling engine. Anna sat on a wooden crate, wiping grease from her fingers with a rag, while Carlos worked on the undercarriage of an old Chevy. The heater buzzed in the background, and the smell of motor oil and coffee hung in the air like memory. "Ever think about leaving Detroit?" Anna asked suddenly, her voice low but steady. Carlos didn't answer at first. He rolled out from under the vehicle, dusted off his hands, and leaned against the workbench. He looked at her with the calm weight of a man who had lived too many lives in one. "I did once," he said. "A long time ago." Anna raised an eyebrow. "What stopped you?" He took a slow breath. Life. Pride. Maybe both. She waited, sensing he had more to say. He sat on the bench across from her, his gaze drifting to the grimy window pane fogged by the cold. "I used to work for Edison Motors," he said quietly. Anna's heart skipped. She kept her face neutral. "Started there young," he continued. "Right out of tech school. Spent 20 years designing engines, solving problems no one else could touch. I wasn't some desk guy. I got my hands dirty, helped build things that lasted." He paused, fingers absent-mindedly rubbing a scar on his wrist. "Then one day, everything changed. New board, new direction. They called it restructuring, but it was a purge. Anyone who made too much, questioned too often, or remembered how things used to be, gone." Anna swallowed. "I've heard about that." Carlos gave a short, bitter laugh. "I was laid off on a Monday morning, walked out with a cardboard box and a handshake that meant nothing. They called it cost-cutting. Said I was part of a different era." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "My wife left 3 months later. Said she didn't sign up for a husband with dirt under his nails and no future. Bank took the house by Christmas. All I had left was this place. Bought it back when things were good. Kept it running because, well, something had to keep running." Anna could barely breathe. She knew exactly what he was talking about. Her uncle, the so-called visionary leader who seized control of Edison Motors, had orchestrated those cuts. Ruthless, efficient, unforgiving. And now she was sitting in the garage of one of his victims. Carlos looked at her then, as if he sensed the storm behind her silence, but his voice was still calm. "I stopped believing in corporations after that, in titles. In the suits that shake your hand while slipping a knife in your back." Anna looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry." He shook his head gently. "Not your fault." She wanted to tell him, to say right then that the man who destroyed his life was her uncle, that she carried the bloodline of that very empire he had been cast from. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the weight in his voice, or the fragile trust that had formed between them. Maybe it was the fear of watching his kindness collapse into resentment. So she said nothing. Carlos stood and picked up a rusted gear from the workbench. He held it between his fingers, turning it slowly. "You know what I learned," he said. "Justice is not in boardrooms or stock reports. It's not in the hands of men with power." Anna looked up, her eyes full of questions. "It's in how we treat each other," he said softly. "That's the only thing that matters." She watched him for a long time after that, the silence between them growing thicker, more meaningful. In the wake of everything he had lost, Carlos had somehow held on to his humanity. To her, that was more powerful than any empire. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the stranger came. Carlos was under the hood of a battered Toyota Corolla when the bell over the garage door jingled, too soft to be one of his regular customers. He looked up and saw a tall man in a dark coat, collar turned up, face clean-shaven, eyes sharp beneath a winter cap. "Afternoon," Carlos said, wiping his hands on a rag. The man nodded curtly. "You the owner?" Carlos nodded. "I'm looking for someone," the man continued, glancing around the garage. "Young woman, early 20s, brown hair. May be injured. Disappeared last week during the storm." Carlos tensed but kept his expression unreadable. "Plenty of people disappear during a storm." "This one's different," the man said. "She's important. Family's worried." Carlos kept his tone even. "You got a name?" The man smiled slightly. "She goes by Anna." Carlos folded the rag and set it aside. "No Anna here." The man tilted his head. "You sure about that?" Carlos held his gaze. "I'd remember someone bleeding and lost showing up at my garage." A pause. The stranger studied him, then reached into his coat and produced a card. "In case you see anything." Carlos took it without looking and slipped it into his pocket. The man turned and walked out without another word. Carlos waited until he was out of sight before turning off the engine he had been working on. He walked quietly to the back room, where Anna was folding rags by the heater. She looked up at his face and froze. "Someone came looking," he said softly. She went pale. "Did he say my name?" Carlos nodded. Anna sat down slowly, hands trembling. "I have to tell you something," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. He waited. She looked at the floor, then back at him. "My name is Anna Reed. My grandfather was the founder of Edison Motors." Carlos's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. "My father, Jonathan Reed, was supposed to take over after my grandfather passed. He was next in line, everyone knew that. But my uncle, my father's younger brother, Daniel, he convinced the board my father wasn't mentally fit, that he needed rest, treatment. Within weeks he was pushed out." Carlos leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Anna kept going, the words coming faster now. "They said it was temporary, but it wasn't. My father was confined. I could visit him, but only under supervision. It felt like a prison." She swallowed hard, her eyes filling. "Then a few weeks ago I found something, financial records, buried in an encrypted server. Massive fraud. My uncle's been funneling money through shell companies. I printed what I could, but he found out, and I ran." Carlos exhaled slowly, the air leaving his lungs like a tire deflating. "I did not know where to go," Anna continued, "but I remembered my grandfather talking about a man, a brilliant engineer, someone who helped build the first engines for the Eclipse line, a man named Carlos Ramirez. He said you had integrity, that you were one of the good ones." Carlos looked away, staring at a dent in the steel wall. "I never meant to lie to you," she said, her voice breaking. "I was scared. I still am." For a long moment neither of them spoke. The only sound was the steady hum of the heater and the wind pressing against the windows. Then Carlos stepped outside. He stood in the cold for nearly a full minute, snowflakes melting on his shoulders, breath rising like steam. He looked out across the empty lot, the gray sky heavy with silence. When he finally walked back in, Anna was sitting exactly where he left her, face downcast. Carlos approached her. Slowly, like a man approaching a skittish animal, he knelt in front of her, gently placed a hand on her shoulder, and said, "I already knew." Her eyes widened. "I figured it out yesterday," he said, "the way you held that wrench, the way you talked about engines like you grew up with them, and the way you flinched every time you heard a car pull in." She started to speak, but he stopped her with a small shake of his head. "I did not keep you here because I did not know," he said softly. "I kept you here because I did." Anna stared at him, stunned, her lips parting without words. "You are not the sum of what your family did," Carlos said. "You are who you choose to be." And in that moment, the weight she had carried for days, the fear, the guilt, the doubt, seemed to ease, just enough to let her breathe. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. Snow still blanketed the streets outside, but inside the garage, life moved with quiet purpose. Carlos began to teach Anna more about cars, not just the basics, but the subtle art of understanding how a machine speaks when something is wrong. "This sound," he said one morning, tilting his ear toward the rumbling engine of an old Ford. "That rattle, not the transmission. It is the heat shield on the exhaust." Anna squinted, listening. "You can tell just by the sound?" Carlos gave a small nod. "Every car has a voice. You just have to learn how to hear it." He never raised his voice, never rushed. He stood beside her as she fumbled with tools, gently correcting her grip, showing her where to press, when to pull, how to listen. "You are not just fixing machines," he told her. "You are listening to something someone else gave up on." Anna soaked it in. She kept a notebook filled with little drawings, diagrams, and notes in her careful handwriting. But at night, after dinner, she wrote something else, pages filled with reflections, hopes, fragments of healing. "He does not talk much, but I feel safe when he is near. He watches everything, says little, but his silence is never cold. It is the kind of silence that listens, that says, 'You matter,' even when you do not speak." She cooked meals on the rusted hot plate in the back office, simple things like scrambled eggs and canned soup with herbs. One evening she made a grilled cheese sandwich that burned slightly at the edges. Carlos ate it without complaint. "It is extra crispy," he said, and the corners of her mouth turned upward into a rare smile. For the first time in her life, she felt like a person, Not a name, not a legacy, not a pawn. Just Anna. They never spoke of what came next. The outside world remained distant, unreal. Here in this quiet garage, surrounded by the smell of motor oil and steel, something rare was blooming. One night, long after the tools had been put away and the heater hummed in its steady rhythm, Carlos sat at his desk, staring at an old photograph in his wallet. Anna watched him from the doorway, sensing something had shifted. "Is that your family?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "My daughter, Isabella." Anna approached slowly, not wanting to intrude. He handed her the photo, a girl, maybe 10 or 11, with wild curls and a smile that stretched from ear to ear. "She was everything," he said, voice low, smart, curious, always wanted to know how things worked. Anna sat beside him. "What happened?" Carlos closed his eyes for a moment. "Car accident, 3 years ago. Some drunk teenager ran a red light. She did not stand a chance." Anna's breath caught. "My wife, she could not stay after that. She said I reminded her too much of what we lost. I tried to hold us together, but—" He let the sentence fade. Silence settled between them. "I see her sometimes," he said, "in small things, in people who do not even know her name." Anna looked down at her hands. "I am sorry." He turned to her then, eyes soft but unreadable. "You remind me of her, not in the way you look, but in the way you are always trying to fix something, even when it hurts." Anna blinked fast, emotion rising in her throat. "I do not know why you ended up here," he said, "but maybe I needed you as much as you needed me." She reached out, placing her hand gently over his. "Maybe we both needed a place to start over." He nodded once, slowly, as if accepting something deeper than words. That night, in her journal, she wrote, "He lost everything, yet he gave me hope. He does not know it, but he is teaching me more than how to fix cars. He is showing me how to live." The snow had begun to melt. Small puddles gathered near the garage door, and the sharp chill of winter slowly gave way to the damp breath of early spring. But the warmth outside could not reach the heaviness in Anna's chest. She stood near the workbench, clutching a worn folder to her chest. Inside were the documents, printouts, emails, account transfers, all carefully copied from her uncle's encrypted server. It was enough to blow open the fraud, to bring legal fire down on Edison Motors and restore her father's name. But it was also dangerous. If she moved too soon or trusted the wrong person, it could all disappear. Carlos stood across from her, wiping his hands with a rag, though they were already clean. He had known this moment was coming. He had seen it in the way she had been staring out the window more often, in the way her laughter had quieted, replaced by something more solemn. "I have to go back," she said softly. "I cannot hide forever." Carlos nodded. "I figured." Anna stepped closer, placing the folder on the bench between them. "This is everything I have. It is not the originals, but it is enough. If something happens to me—" Carlos raised his hand, stopping her. "No." She blinked. "What? You do not get to speak like that, like you are already gone." She looked down, swallowing the fear in her throat. "I have to be prepared." Carlos picked up the folder, glanced through it, then set it aside. "If you do not come back, I will take this where it needs to go, but you will come back." "How can you be sure?" "Because you are not just doing this for your father," he said. "You are doing it for yourself, for the girl who finally stopped running." She bit her lip, fighting the tears that threatened to come. He stepped around the bench, close enough now that she could see the flicker of pain behind his steady eyes. "Do not lose yourself in their world, Anna," he said. "No matter how loud it gets, no matter how ugly. You are not one of them. Remember that." She nodded, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. She unfolded it slowly, a dark gray scarf, hand-knitted, a little uneven at the edges but warm and soft. "I do not have much to give," she said, placing it in his hands. "But this is the only thing I have ever made with my own 2 hands." Carlos looked at the scarf, then back at her. "It is perfect." She smiled faintly. "I started it that first night, after you made me soup. I thought, maybe I would never get the chance to say thank you properly." "You did not need to," he said, but I wanted to. She adjusted her coat, buttoned it slowly. I should go before it gets dark. He followed her to the door. Outside, the air was crisp but clear, the sky tinged with orange from the setting sun. Her car, a modest rental, waited at the edge of the lot. Anna turned to face him one last time. I am scared. Carlos reached up and touched her shoulder gently. Good. That means you are not reckless, she managed a shaky laugh. Will you wait? I will be right here, he said. Like always. She climbed into the car, started the engine, and paused for a moment before shifting into gear. Their eyes met through the windshield, so much unspoken between them. Then she drove off, the tires crunching over gravel, leaving behind only a trail of dust and silence. Carlos stood there until the sound of the engine faded. He stepped back inside, walked to the bench, and picked up the scarf. The wool was soft in his calloused hands, the stitches imperfect, human, real. He sat down slowly, the weight of the empty room pressing in on him. He held the scarf close, pressed it to his chest, and for the first time in years let the tears fall, quiet, steady, and full of something he could not name, not grief, not regret, hope. Worn, tender, and utterly fragile, but real. The press conference room in downtown Detroit buzzed with tension. Reporters packed the space, cameras flashing, whispers spreading like wildfire, fraud, betrayal, a long-lost heir. No one knew what to expect. At exactly noon, Anna walked onto the stage. Dressed in black and gray, her hair tied back, she stood behind the podium with steady eyes and a folder clutched in her arms. My name is Anna Reed, she began, voice clear despite its tremble. Granddaughter of Walter Reed, founder of Edison Motors, and daughter of Jonathan Reed, wrongfully removed from leadership. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lit up. For the last 2 years, my uncle, Daniel Reed, manipulated the company's leadership and records, pushing my father out under false claims of instability. She lifted a document from her folder, emails, audit reports, and internal memos proving his actions. Reporters leaned forward, scribbling. Flashbulbs flared. I ran after uncovering the truth, Anna continued. My life was threatened, but thanks to someone kind, I survived. I returned not for power, but for the people who believed in what this company used to stand for. She paused, emotion rising. I'm not here to claim a title. I'm here to end a lie. She stepped aside. From behind the curtain, Jonathan Reed emerged, older, slower, but unmistakably strong. The room fell silent. Anna met him at center stage. No words, just a long, tearful embrace between father and daughter. When they separated, Anna returned to the microphone. I don't want to lead Edison Motors, she said. It belongs to its people, builders, dreamers, and workers. People like Carlos Ramirez. A stir of curiosity swept the room. Carlos helped design the Eclipse engine. He was fired during my uncle's purge, not for failure but for standing by his principles. He lost everything. And yet, he took me in when I had nowhere else to go. He taught me what it means to rebuild, not with money, but with honesty. She placed another document on the podium. Effective immediately, Carlos Ramirez will serve as senior consultant to the Edison Foundation, a new initiative focused on ethical innovation and community investment. Shutters clicked, questions flew, but Anna's final words silenced them all. Let Edison's legacy be measured not in profit, but in people. By evening, headlines exploded. The Edison hires recluse, fraud exposed in Reed family, mechanic named hero in scandal. But one stood out across every screen and page. The girl who fell in the snow, and the man who caught her. In his quiet garage, Carlos sat watching the broadcast, scarf around his neck, eyes soft. When the screen showed Anna and her father together, he smiled, not with pride or revenge, but with quiet, enduring peace. He had repaired many engines, but this was redemption. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the pavement outside the garage. Spring had arrived, warming the concrete, coaxing green from the trees. A light breeze carried the scent of engine grease and early blossoms. Carlos pulled his truck into the lot, the engine low and steady. It had been a month since the press conference, since Anna stood before the world and spoke the truth, since she handed him a scarf and a goodbye. He had not seen her since. The garage looked the same, yet different. Windows washed, the calendar replaced. There was care in the details, as if someone had been watching over it. Then he saw her. She sat on the bench outside the office, her back to him. Still, calm, certain. "Thought you might be here," he said. Anna turned, smiling softly. She rose and walked to him, her steps confident. "I told you I would come back," she said. "I'm glad you did," he replied. She looked toward the garage. "That Mustang still in there?" Carlos chuckled. "Still waiting. Let's fix that." Inside, the car sat where they had left it. They worked side by side, passing tools, sharing laughter. Anna dropped the same wrench twice, grinning both times. "You never stop learning," Carlos said. "Even when you think you already know," she finished. By sunset, they sat against the wall, the Mustang's engine humming quietly beside them. "I'm starting something," Anna said. "A free workshop, for girls, to teach them about cars, confidence, capability. It'll be called the Reed Initiative. For my father. And you?" Carlos didn't speak right away. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her a folded paper. She opened it, reading in silence. "Director?" she asked, eyes wide. He nodded. "A new tech center, approved by the Edison Foundation, for vets, workers needing a second chance. What's it called?" "The Jonathan Reed Center for Innovation." She blinked quickly, her voice soft. He would be proud. Carlos looked at her with quiet warmth. "So will they of you." That night, after she left with a promise to return in the morning, Carlos wandered the garage. He stopped at the wall where Isabella's photo once hung. He placed a new one beside it. Anna, beside the Mustang, grease on her face, eyes alive. He stepped back, letting memory and hope stand side by side. Then, in the silence, he whispered to the room, the past, and the girl who saved him, too. Sometimes, people come into your life not to change you, but to remind you who you were when you still believed in kindness. And for the first time in years, Carlos Ramirez smiled. Thank you for watching this emotional journey of healing, redemption, and unexpected love. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the beauty of kindness, or made you believe again in second chances, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we share powerful tales like this one, real or inspired by life, that bring light to the darkest corners of the human experience, stories that warm your heart, make you think, and sometimes make you cry in the best way. If you believe in the power of compassion, resilience, and human connection, be sure to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that could change your day or even your life. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, some stories don't just entertain, they heal.